luxury hotel in Nevada that's been abandoned since World War II is said to be haunted by the ghost of a woman who was chained in the basement, her cries still echoing through the halls. In Goa, a half-finished 5-star resort was abandoned after one of its owners mysteriously died, and now locals claim it's cursed. These are abandoned hotels hiding dark paranormal secrets. Starting off this list today, we are talking about the Goldfield Hotel in Goldfield, Nevada. Back in the early 1900s, the Goldfield Hotel was the definition of luxury. There were crystal chandeliers, the furniture was mahogany, and there was this big grand staircase. But after World War II, the place shut down and it started rotting from the inside out. That's when the ghost stories started. The most talked about spirit is a woman named Elizabeth. The story goes she was involved with George Wingfield, one of the men behind the hotel. When she got pregnant, he supposedly locked her in the basement to hide the scandal. She either died down there or was left to waste away. No one knows for sure, but either way, people say she's still there today. Paranormal teams have claimed to hear her crying, and some have recorded what sounds like chains dragging across the floor. Visitors who sneak into the place will say they'll hear doors slamming by themselves, certain rooms will randomly be colder than others, and voices will be heard echoing from the empty rooms. Some also say the elevator runs on its own. Of course, there's no power though. One common story is that if you go into the basement, your flashlight will inexplicably stop working. Ghost Adventures filmed an episode there and even said they felt like something was off. The place has been gutted, vandalized, and has continued to rot over time, but somehow it's still standing. Next up, we are talking about the Ghost Hotel in Goa, India. The Sinha Hotel was supposed to be a 5-star paradise on the Goan coast. Construction started in the early 90s, but then something happened. One of the owners was allegedly killed under very mysterious circumstances, and the whole project was abandoned overnight. Since then, no one has touched it. The building sits there half-finished, covered in vines and mold, slowly being swallowed by the jungle. It makes for a pretty atmospheric location, even more so because locals call it the Ghost Hotel. People claim they hear strange noises coming from it, whispers, screams, laughter, crying, even though the place is, of course, completely empty. Supposed to be, anyway. And at night, lights are sometimes seen flickering inside, even though there's no electricity. Some say they've spotted a figure standing on the top floor, and some who've tried to explore the place have ended up running out, convinced something was following them. Only there's no one ever really there. It goes beyond haunting. Some say the land itself is cursed. Construction workers who tried to restart the build reportedly quit after bizarre accidents and equipment failures. And there are rumors of people getting physically sick after spending time there. Nobody really knows what happened to the hotel's owner or why no one's ever tried to finish the project. All that's left is this concrete shell. Even during the day, the place feels off. Travelers who visit the nearby beach say the atmosphere around the building is heavy, like the air is thicker. People will warn you not to come here after dark. Next, we are talking about the Grand Laguna Hotel in Koh Chang, Thailand. Not many people even knew this place existed until a fire tore through it in early 2024, but the Grand Laguna Hotel already had a weird, unsettling reputation long before it went up in flames. It was originally a cruise ship, an actual ocean liner that someone decided to turn into a floating hotel. Pretty cool. They dragged it up onto land near Koh Chang, gutted it, and started building. Unfortunately though, the whole project was a financial mess. Construction kept stalling, apparently the funding dried up. I'm sure it's not cheap to turn a cruise ship into a hotel, but there are also rumors that there was some shady business involved. Either way, it never opened to the public. It just sat there. rusting by the jungle. But over the years, people started talking about the place because even though it was abandoned, people swore it wasn't empty. Rumors began to spread about people breaking in and never coming back out. People would say they heard screams from inside at night and that the place was crawling with spirits. At least one traveler who visited the site in the early 2000s said they found a room with melted candles, rotting food, and burn marks on the wall. It looked like someone had been doing some kind of ritual in there. Then came the fire. It started in January of 2024. There was no one officially inside, but some locals claimed they saw shadowy figures moving near the ship just before it caught. The entire thing was almost completely destroyed, with flames lighting up the night sky over Ko Chang. But even with the ship gone now, some still get unsettling vibes around the area, like it somehow left something behind. Some believe the fire didn't cleanse the place, that it just stirred up whatever was already there.
Pripyat, Ukraine, the ghost town of Chernobyl. Now, Pripyat was once a thriving city built for workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. On April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 exploded, releasing radioactive material into the air. Now, the city was evacuated on April 27, 1986, one day after the Chernobyl disaster. The residents were told, it was just a precautionary evacuation. However, they never returned, and today nature is taking it back. Trees basically grow through apartments, schools still have toys and lesson plans frozen in time. Picture books, children's dolls, and hundreds of gas masks are among the personal items that are actually left behind in this ghost town, which paint a very, eerie picture of all that remains of a community that was once 50,000 people strong. But darker stories persist. Visitors report hearing disembodied voices, counters of spiking in empty rooms, and also the Black Bird of Chernobyl, which is said to be a winged creature that's said to have appeared before the explosion, possibly, a harbinger of demise. Now, the real horror, though, is the Soviet cover-up, the delay in evacuation, the silencing of whistleblowers. It wasn't just radiation that poisoned the people, but secrets. Urban explorer Adam Mark from Denbighshire in Wales, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, visited the exclusion zone just a few days ago and recorded new footage of the city, which appears to have been frozen in time. Now, haunting snaps include a nursery with rows of cots, mattresses, and dolls still eerily in place, whilst other photographers or other photographs show thousands of gas masks just lying abandoned on the floor, and the theme park rides, which are now being swallowed up by nature. Everyday objects such as toys, books, even medicine bottles can still be seen, as residents were told they would be able to return home in like 3 days. Yet, almost 40 years later, the Soviet town still lies completely abandoned. Adam actually said, you aren't supposed to go there at all because it's just so dangerous. The buildings are unstable and the floors are seriously dodgy. It was all pretty eerie and quite sad, really. But the most fascinating building for him was the morgue. There were untouched jars full of liquid in there, perfectly preserved. Now, the city remains abandoned today, a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences of human error. The city's abandoned buildings, schools, and hospitals are a testament to the lives that were disrupted and destroyed. Many believe that the city's radiation-contaminated environment has led to very strange and unexplained phenomena, including glowing anomalies and unexplained radiation readings. Poveglia Island in Venice, Italy, or better known as the gateway to hell. When it comes to this island, it's a little hard to tell what is true and what is made up, as many suspicions and tales surround the island. Poveglia comprises a group of 3 islands, with 2 being naturally formed and the 3rd resembling Venice through the use of wooden pillars and layers of earth. Now, one island is entirely vegetation, the other houses the main buildings, and finally the smallest is an octagon used as a small fort to protect the island and act as a fort before reaching Venice. Now, the island first welcomed inhabitants in the 7th century, and throughout the following years it grew into a peaceful little community that avoided invasions occurring on the mainland and other stuff. By avoiding the mainland, they also were lucky enough to avoid taxes, creating a very happy community, as you can imagine. They would often trade with nearby, people just mostly avoided the Italian Yucatan Peninsula. Now, this tiny island in the Venetian Lagoon is known as one of the most haunted places in the world. In the 1700s, it was used to quarantine plague victims, literally dumping grounds for the recently passed on. Now, later in the 20th century, it became a psychiatric hospital. According to legend, a doctor there experimented on patients performing crude lobotomies. He later threw himself, or was thrown, that's kind of unclear, off the hospital bell tower, claiming he was haunted by the souls that he tormented. You'll find Poveglia floating off the southwest end of Lido di Venezia. Now, today the island only hosts a few small buildings on the main island, which is entirely abandoned. It's now completely off limits to visitors, so you can't go. Fishermen avoid its waters, locals won't even sail near it. Historians estimate over 100,000 people passed away in Poveglia. Now, some say the soil is basically 50% human ash. At least that is one of the rumors floating around. Now, with all the victims of the plague, the hospital didn't know how to get rid of the bodies, so they just decided to burn them. This isn't just an abandoned island, it's a mass grave. It's tough to say which version of the story might be creepier, seeing the abandoned land and the destroyed structures. You can't help but feel the weight of the patients who live there and contemplate the sad stories of the island. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, located in West Virginia. The Trans-Lunatic Asylum operated from 1864 to 1994. This hospital was designed to treat patients with innovative architectural features such as large windows and plenty of natural light. However, the hospital's history is marred by reports of patient mistreatment, neglect, and experimentation. Many patients were subjected to inhumane treatments, including lobotomies and other forms of torment. Today, the asylum is said to be haunted by the spirits of former patients, and paranormal investigators have captured evidence of unexplained phenomena. Now, in 2007, it was privately purchased and has become a museum/historic location and ghost hunting spot. It has a most unpleasant and dark history, and one person on Reddit actually shared their experience as a guide for the asylum. They wrote about their experience, basically saying that in 2001, I retired from my position as a guide and ghost hunt event manager under severe burnout. After all that I experienced there, it solidified in my mind that paranormal things that defy rational explanation do indeed happen, and certain phenomena are absolutely real. They went on to share a couple of strange things that they experienced in their time there. In their words, they said, one evening while training for the job, I was on the first floor with a couple coworkers while everyone else was touring upstairs. We were just kind of killing time, quietly observing the area. Lights from outside was coming in through the windows, casting on the inner hall's wall. Now, in that light, I watched the perfect silhouette of a man from head to toe walk through that light from left to right. I said something about it, and the three of us watched as an arm and hand moved into the light from the right side. I immediately ran into the room and began looking out the window for someone outside. There was no one there. At that time, the realization that from the ground to the bottom of the window is like 7 feet. It didn't even occur to me. I will never forget the crisp, clear silhouette shape for as long as I live. Spooky. This is one place I don't think I have any interest in visiting anytime soon. The Central State Hospital. In Indiana, the Central State Hospital was once a sprawling complex of buildings that housed thousands of patients. Now, the hospital was notorious for its overcrowding, poor conditions, and experimental treatments. One of the most disturbing practices was the use of lobotomies, which were performed on patients as young as 12 years old. The hospital's dark history has led to numerous reports of paranormal activity, including ghostly apparitions and unexplained noises. Now, the story begins after the Civil War at the Howard's Grove Freeman Hospital, created for or from a former Confederate hospital in 1868. Now, in 1882, a 300-acre farm called the Mayfield Farm in Dinwiddie County was purchased and upgraded to open as the new Central Lunatic Asylum. Over 400 patients were transferred from Howard's Grove to the new asylum, with over another 100 others on a wait list, basically. Now, the asylum was the only one to cater exclusively to African Americans in the entire state. In 1894, legislation was created to change the image of these hospitals, so the Central Lunatic Asylum became Central State Hospital, or just Central State. Now, politicians hoped the name change would evoke positive feelings towards these facilities, patients, and medical staff, but by the 1950s, the hospital had reached its maximum capacity with over 4,800 patients. Over 180 buildings on the campus, and another 200 acres had been bought, so Central State Hospital was essentially a small city at this point. Spooky abandoned asylums are always haunted, right? Well, it seems like Central State is just no different. While there are no named ghosts, there are plenty of stories from patients and staff about objects moving, lights flickering, and shadow people running around campus. There are even stories from police officers who have seen and heard things. Moans, wails, screams, and cries are said to echo around the crumbling buildings in the dead of the night. Plants like ivy and trees grow up and through the abandoned buildings. It's a creepy sight to behold. There's a cemetery on the campus filled with nameless graves. Next is the Yorktown Memorial Hospital. This abandoned hospital, which served as a rehabilitation facility, is said to be a hotbed for ghost activity, with many people claiming to have experienced paranormal phenomena. Now, people who managed to get inside were encountering spirits that may have grabbed them from behind, shoved, and even lightly touched. You know, this is a place where many searching for help seem lost. Their spirits seem to be anything but benevolent. Now, the Yorktown Memorial Hospital dates back to 1950 when construction began, and it actually opened in 1951. Now, the Felician Sisters, a group of nuns affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church, these sisters themselves are said to still be in the hospital, or at least an entity basically masquerading as the nuns is there. An apparition of a nun in full habit has been seen many times in various areas of the hospital, and it's said that people who visit who also have tattoos have been like scratched and, you know, rushed presumably by the strict nuns. The 30,000 square foot hospital had administration offices, two-story wings with hospital rooms, a chapel, and a basement. It closed in 1986 and later reopened as a substance and alcohol rehabilitation center, which also closed in the 1990s. Now, the hospital is said to be haunted, with some claiming the spirits of nearly 2,000 people who passed there still linger. The building was featured on the television show Ghost Adventures, where Zach Bagans and his team investigated the alleged paranormal activity. The place is loaded with recorded activity and claims of paranormal occurrences, and that is why it is among the most highly toured and frequently investigated paranormal locations in Texas. Now, the most widely reported apparition at Yorktown Memorial Hospital seems to be a little girl named Stacy. Now, nobody seems to know how Stacy passed away, just that she's very active on the property. She can be found in the library if you sit down and read her a story. She has also rolled a ball by request. Another widely seen apparition is the heartbreaking entity named TJ. Now, nobody knows if that's his real name, but the apparition seems to be the ghost of an addict who came to the back door of the hospital needing help. Now, it seems the back door buzzer was broken, nobody answered, and then they found this poor young man's perished body on the back stoop the next day. Although the property is now privately owned, you can take a guided tour for $25. And if you're a paranormal investigator, that's a cool $500. The Alamo in San Antonio, Texas. Way back when, before the Alamo earned its nickname as the Alamo, it was known as Mission San Antonio de Valero. Now, the site for the church had been chosen by Father Antonio after the monks' first established mission, which had taken a very horrible turn for the worse. The Alamo is definitely worth remembering, though, not just for its pivotal role in the battle for Texas, but also for its haunted activity. Even after the conflict in 1836, many of the battle's perished people were buried in unmarked mass graves. It was not long after the battle had ended that the first sightings, of specters at the Alamo began to surface. So it will definitely be expected that ghosts will be haunting the grounds at night. Security guards have often heard mysterious footsteps. It is said that often construction workers going, and doing work in the Alamo Plaza sometimes pull up skulls and bones. One of the most commonly spotted ghosts at the old mission is that of a blonde-haired boy. He's seen most often in the upstairs left window, which now is actually a part of the gift shop. As the story goes, it is believed that the little boy was evacuated during the siege of the Alamo. Now, although he did survive, it's thought that perhaps his parents did not, and his spirit returns, over and over and over again to the site where he last saw them, which is really sad. Now, during the month of February, his little ghost is seen the most frequently, so go then if you want to see it. Now, a ghostly guard is also still spotted on the south side of the roof, especially on nights when it's rainy or cold. Visitors of the Alamo, which became a museum in 1905, have expressed feelings very, melancholy when wandering through the main chapel area, and some have even felt really depressed, that tears leap to their eyes and they are powerless to control their emotions. Others have reported, hearing voices, whispers, as though the spirits are still experiencing the worry of the impending, battles and footsteps that are lurking. Lastly, we have the Goatsman Bridge. Now, this bridge was originally named the Old Elton Bridge, and it's located in Denton, Austin, Texas. It was built for horse carriages and later automotive, vehicles. However, the Goatman's Bridge was also the site of a terrible assassination. In 1938, a group of Klansmen, also known as, the Triple K people, assassinated a very successful African-American goat farmer, Oscar Washburn. Now, many who have crossed at night have claimed to have seen, instead though, the demonic figure of a man with a goat's head waiting for them at the other side. So we don't know if it's Oscar or not. Now, it is said that his spirit haunts the bridge almost nightly. Legend has it, if you cross the bridge at night with no headlights on, you will encounter the spirit of the goat man. Now, whether he is evil or not is anyone's guess. Those who have passed through this Texas haunted location have reported seeing random bright lights, feelings of being touched and grabbed by a mysterious person. Some have even reported having rocks thrown at them. Alternate versions of the ghost story have, also circulated, including one that suggests the bridge is actually haunted by the goatman's wife. Another story blames the work of Satanists. Now, most versions of the tale tend to include a warning that knocking 3 times on the trusses of the bridge runs the risk of bringing out the goatman, so don't do that. Over the decades, there have been numerous alleged sightings of a ghost-like apparition with a goat head just haunting the area. Some locals have even claimed to see glowing eyes staring at them on the bridge, while others have claimed to hear splashing in the creek basically below them, following a very unsettling laughter. Now, in 2017, BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural investigated some of these, kind of claims. Now, naturally, none of the ghost stories surrounding the bridge are based on any specific historical facts. Today, the bridge is only used for foot traffic since a replacement bridge was constructed nearby. Starting with Skinwalker Cabin. The Skinwalker Cabin is located in the town of Wimberley and is said to be haunted by a malevolent entity known as a skinwalker. According to Native American folklore, a skinwalker is a type of shapeshifter that can take on various forms, including humans and animals. Now, the myth also behind skinwalkers is that they are witches from Navajo mythology who can shapeshift into animals like wolves, coyotes, or birds, basically to cause harm. They possess supernatural abilities such as speed, mimicry, and mind control. There are many shapeshifting figures in other cultures around the world as well. In its animal form, the skinwalker is capable of inflicting pain, illness, or even fatality on its victims. The skinwalker can also possess humans and cause them to behave in very unnatural manners. Now, the skinwalker is typically seen as a malevolent, being and is often associated with witchcraft and black magic. A skinwalker may also use the voice of a relative or the cry of an infant to lure victims out of the safety of their homes. Both humans and animals can easily tell a skinwalker from a real animal, as the skinwalker is unable to move completely naturally in animal form. Now, visitors of the cabin have reported strange occurrences such as unexplained noises, movements, and even physical attacks. Some believe the cabin was built on a site where Native American rituals were performed and that the skinwalker entity is a result of these rituals. One person on Reddit shared their experience at Skinwalker Cabin and gave really great details, so if you want to read it all, check it out on Reddit under No Sleep. It's called My Experience at Skinwalker Cabin. And if reading isn't your jam, you can also watch a 2-hour video on YouTube by the Paranormal Files where Colin actually documents his whole experience at Skinwalker Cabin in Texas and showcases the paranormal activity that he caught on camera. Next up is the Driskill Hotel. The Driskill Hotel, located in Austin, is said to be haunted by the ghost of its former owner, Colonel Jesse Driskill. Now, he opened his spectacular hotel on December 20th, 1886, after investing, though, a staggering $407,000 into the work. Rumor has it he lost his pride and joy in a high-stakes poker game. Now, according to legend, Colonel Driskill passed away in the hotel in 1886, and his ghost has been seen by numerous guests and staff. Guests have reported strange things happening, such as, unexplained noises, movements, even sightings of Colonel Driskill's ghost. Now, some believe that the ghost is a friendly spirit, while others believe no, it is a malevolent entity potentially sent from the devil himself, who is determined to drive guests away. Apparitions of ghostly brides or the sounds of a woman wailing and crying are frequent accounts from those brave enough to actually stay in a suite there. And there's been reports of a spirit or demon basically messing with electricity and plumbing, likely fascinated, with the hotel's modern conveniences. The most documented Driskill ghost story, and one of Austin's best ghost stories, is that of Samantha, the 4-year-old daughter of a senator who passed in 1887. In a freak accident, she actually tumbled down the marble grand staircase to her demise while chasing a ball that her father bought saw her. The Driskill has welcomed very high society events and historic, political events over the years. In 1934, Lyndon Baines Johnson met his future wife Lady Bird at the Driskill. He later used the hotel as his headquarters as well for the White House Press Corps. Now, this haunted hotel has a total of 189 guest rooms and daily history tours are available. So if you're ever in the area, give it a go. It's free for guests and $20 for non-guests. The St. Augustine Lighthouse. Now, this is the Pity Sisters haunting. The St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida is not just a beacon, it's a monument to tragedy. Now, after being darkened during the Civil War on June 1st, 1867, the old Spanish watchtower once more became a functioning lighthouse with the return of its light. Nevertheless, though, it soon became clear that the structure would soon lose the battle with Mother Nature as the sea continued to erode the land around the lighthouse. After several reports to the United States Lighthouse Board referencing the erosion and, encroaching seas, Congress approved the money for a new St. Augustine Lighthouse Tower. The construction of the tower began in 1871, but what was supposed to be a benefit to public transportation and safety soon turned to tragedy. So Hezekiah Pity, a lighthouse keeper, moved his family from Maine to oversee the lighthouse construction in the 1870s. His daughters Mary, Eliza, and little Carrie were a very lively presence exploring the site as it was being built. Now, just as any children would, the Pity children turned the construction site into a playground, inviting the children of the workers into their fun. A railway cart moved the supplies from supply ships docked at Salt Run to the building site. Now, riding the cart down to the water was a favorite pastime for the Pity children. They used the cart as a Victorian era kind of roller coaster, riding the cart to the water and bringing it back up to the site to ride again. Only a wooden board at the end of the rail stopped the cart from tipping over into the water. One fateful day, however, a cart carrying the girls and I believe another child, which was their friend, overturned near the water. Carrie, the youngest, was saved, but Mary and Eliza drowned. Now, the grief that followed left a mark not just on the family, but on the lighthouse itself. Now, in the 145 years since the accident, strange occurrences have been repeatedly attributed to the spirits of the girls. In 1955, the lighthouse lamp was fully automated and the United States Coast Guard replaced lighthouse keepers with a position called lamp lighter. Now, the local lamplighter had all the duties of a light keeper but did not live on site. As a result, the keeper's house was rented for a time. A local man who crafted leather goods rented the property during the 1960s. Now, he tells the story of waking up one night with a small girl standing by his bed. As he blinked his eyes to look at her, she disappeared. Another evening, a female guest on a Dark of the Moon tour was standing on the first step of the metal lighthouse staircase. When she took her first step to climb the tower, she found her shoelace tied to the staircase. Whether it was a ghost or her companion playing a trick, we really can't say. Now, visitors now report the giggles of children echoing through the spiral staircases, shadows kind of fitting across the walls, and cold spots near areas associated with the girls passing. Some have even claimed to see two figures holding hands watching from the lighthouse windows. Paranormal investigations have captured unexplained sounds and moving shadows, strengthening the belief that the Pity sisters remain guardians of the lighthouse and its light. The Point O'Barks Lighthouse, the keeper who never left. Now, the keeper who never left refers to the legend of Catherine Shook, Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper at Point O'Barks, who is said to haunt the lighthouse after her husband drowned in 1849. While no actual keeper has permanently remained, Catherine is said to be seen in mourning clothes on the cliffs or in the lighthouse window, with visitors reporting strange occurrences. Michigan's Point O'Barks Lighthouse stands on the edge of Lake Huron, a solitary sentinel in a landscape of storms and just shipwrecks. Now, since its construction in 1847, it has seen countless tragedies. One tale tells of one keeper's wife who also fell to her demise while navigating the narrow spiral staircase during a blizzard. Staff report seeing her figure in a long white gown and feeling sudden chills near the staircase. Locals call her Lighthouse Lucy, a spirit said to linger in a protective, sometimes mischievous, kind of watch over the building. Over the years, multiple shipwrecks occurred near the lighthouse, each adding to its, spectral population. Visitors have reported hearing ghostly voices calling for help, seeing lights flicker without cause and doors opening on their own. Investigators have documented unexplained electromagnetic activity and temperature fluctuations. Footsteps and giggling have also been heard on the lighthouse top stairs. Now, the combination of the lighthouse's history of tragedy and these ghostly accounts makes this site a popular location for ghost hunters. This lighthouse now serves as a museum, but its ghostly residents seem unwilling to leave a haunting reminder of, the lives of those who maintained the light and the waters it watched over. These haunted lighthouses, each with their tragic past, often, they offer more than just ghost stories. They tell stories of isolation, bravery, and obsession, where the line between life and demise demise, reality and legend blurs. When you walk the staircases, listen to the wind against the glass, or feel the cold seep into your bones, remember. The Smalls Lighthouse tragedy. Now, the Smalls Lighthouse rises from the storm-tossed waters of the Celtic Sea just off the coast of Wales. It seems like a lonely sentinel, guarding against shipwrecks, but the sea it watches over has claimed far more than ships. It has claimed sanity and even life itself. The lighthouse was built in 1776 at the demand of merchant shipping companies' frustrations who were losing both vessels and profit in these waters. Dock Master Phillips got approval for the construction and bizarrely went with musical instrument makers Henry Whiteside's design for the lighthouse. Now, this turned out to be a bad choice. In 1801, two men, Thomas Howell and his assistant Thomas Griffith, who were stationed there, being a lighthouse keeper then was not really a glamorous job. It was a test of endurance, patience, and mental fortitude. Now, the Smalls Lighthouse was isolated, battered by wind, waves, and freezing spray. Food was scarce and supplies had to be hauled up, precautiously, and contact with the mainland was very rare, sometimes non-existent for weeks. Now, during their shift though, Griffith passed away suddenly. Some say it was illness, others whisper that the harsh conditions drove him to a fatal mistake. Howell, left alone, faced an impossible problem. How could he deal with the corpse when he had no tools or help? He did the unthinkable. He lashed Griffith's body to the outside of the lighthouse. Day after day, the corpse kind of swung in the wind, and Howell was forced to live with it. Sailors who passed the lighthouse later reported seeing the skeletal arms sway in the wind, an eternal ghastly kind of reminder of, just isolation and demise. Now, the psychological toll was unimaginable. Howell himself later recounted feeling haunted, sometimes seeing Griffith's shadowy figure moving in corners where no one could, and this gruesome tragedy spurred authorities to rethink lighthouse staffing, increasing crews from 2 to 3 men for both safety and just mental well-being. The Blue Lady of Hilton Head Island. Now, this is devotion beyond demise. Now, the Blue Lady of Hilton Head is a ghost story about Caroline, the daughter of a 19th century lighthouse keeper at the Hilton Head Island Rear Range Lighthouse, or Leamington Lighthouse. Now, the Hilton Head Island Lighthouse in South Carolina is famous not just for guiding ships, but for spirits that roam its lantern room. This is the tale of Caroline Fripp, who again is the daughter of lighthouse keeper Adam Fripp. Now, it was 1893 and a devastating hurricane slammed the coastline. Adam, a man known for his diligence, refused to leave his post. The light had to stay lit, he believed, to protect the sailors who relied on it. But during the hurricane, he collapsed and passed away in the lantern room, his heart unable to withstand the storm. Caroline, only a young woman, promised to stay and keep the light functioning, so she took up her father's mantle. She donned a flowing blue dress, the color her father had always admired, and climbed the spiral staircase into the lantern room. Now, for a week, she maintained the light, sometimes alone, often in darkness, listening to the wind screaming through the treetops and waves smashing against the shoreline. She worked tirelessly through the storm. Exhausted, she too succumbed, but legend says her spirit never left. Caroline was buried in a blue dress, and which she was wearing when she worked the light. Visitors often report seeing a figure in blue moving along the lighthouse spiral stairs, or glimpsing her reflection in the glass of the lantern room during storms. Some claim the light flickers when no storm is present, as if Caroline is still making sure it stays on. Now, paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained cold spots, faint footsteps inside the lighthouse, especially near the lantern room, and to commemorate the legend, the Palmetto Dunes Resort actually created a Blue Lady IPA beer. The Seguin Island Lighthouse. Now, this is the piano that played for the deceased. The legend of the Seguin Island Lighthouse involves a 19th century lighthouse keeper who, driven mad by his wife's repetitive playing of a single piano tune on their isolated island, axed the piano, unalived her, and then himself. So on Seguin Island off the coast of Maine, a lighthouse sits kind of harsh between, winds and rolling waves. It's small but foreboding, and with a tale that combines isolation, obsession, and tragedy. In the early 1800s, a lighthouse keeper brought his young wife to the island. It was a lonely existence. Weeks could pass without seeing another human, so to occupy her, he got her a piano and shipped it to the island, and it was a gift meant to provide comfort. But soon, a chilling pattern emerged. She learned only one song, played it over and over and over, day after day. Sailors reported hearing the melody drifting over the water, very eerie and, insistent. Now, the repetition wore on the keeper's mind. He became convinced that the piano, and perhaps his wife herself, was trying to drive him mad. One night, in a frenzy, he destroyed the piano, and in his very deranged state, took his wife's life. Soon after, he ended his own life. Now, the island was left in silence. Today, the piano's tune is actually said to haunt the island. Visitors report hearing faint notes in, the dead of night, even when no instrument is present. Shadows are seen moving in the lighthouse, and some say the couple's spirits replay the final moments of their tragic lives. Anyone who visits claims to still hear the faint faint sound of the piano, and one of historians, Jeremy de Torment, has found no evidence to support these stories, suggesting it is likely fiction, but during the summer months, visitors can take a ferry from Popham Beach for tours of the island. Now, despite its spooky and very haunted past, the island does offer a unique blend of just natural beauty and a chance to explore the history and the legends of the lighthouses there. So if you're ever in the area, go visit and report back to us. Clinton Road Bridge in New Jersey. Now, in the forests of New Jersey lies a stretch of road so terrifying that even hardened paranormal investigators approach it with caution. And at the heart of it is the Ghost Boy Bridge, a site where legend says the deceased don't rest quietly. Now, Clinton Road, located in West Milford, has been called the most haunted road in America, but the bridge over Dead Man's Curve is where most of the supernatural activity focuses. The story goes that a young boy passed away there, either drowned in the river or struck by a car while chasing after a dropped coin. Now, today visitors claim that if you throw a coin into the water, the boy's ghost will throw it back to you. But it doesn't stop there. People who stand on the bridge often feel a very icy hand brush against their skin. Some say they've been pushed, as if the boy's ghost is trying to save them from, sharing his fate maybe. Others claim to see a childlike figure standing kind of at the water's edge, only to then vanish the moment the headlights hit it. And then there's the larger legend of Clinton Road itself. Drivers report phantom headlights tailgating them only to disappear without a trace. Strange animal hybrids, described as part wolf, part human, have been spotted darting in the woods, and the area has a dark history. It's been connected to cult rituals, abandoned structures, and even, mobs being there now, with bodies allegedly dumped in the nearby woods. One of the most chilling stories comes from a group of teenagers who parked on the bridge to test the coin legend. They laughed, tossed the coins, and waited. Moments later, they found the same coins sitting on their car hood. The laughter ended, of course, when they noticed small wet footprints leading across the bridge, stopping directly beside their car. With its mix of ghostly legends, real criminal history, and bizarre sightings, Clinton Road and its haunted bridge embody the perfect storm of paranormal terror. Crybaby Bridge in Salem, Ohio. Now, there's nothing more chilling than hearing the cry of a baby in the middle of the night, right? Especially when no baby is there. Well, that's the legend of Crybaby Bridge on Egypt Road in Salem, Ohio. Now, the story goes back decades. According to local legend, a mother brought her infant to the bridge one night and, for reasons unknown, threw the child into the water below. Some say she was driven insane, others whisper it was part of some weird ritual. Now, whatever the cause, the baby of course drowned, and ever since, the sound of its cries has haunted the area. Visitors report hearing the unmistakable wail of an infant coming from the river. Sometimes the crying grows louder the closer you get, only to stop suddenly, leaving behind a very oppressive silence. Couples who park nearby have claimed to hear faint sobbing all around their car. Others say they've seen glowing orbs, hovering above the bridge, or even the figure of a woman in white searching desperately in the darkness. But the bridge's disturbing reputation doesn't end with ghost stories. Paranormal groups investigating the site have reported equipment malfunctions, drained batteries, unexplained scratches on their skin. One local said he felt a sharp tug on his shirt as though a child was trying to grab his attention. Another swore he saw tiny handprints appear on the windows of his car. The legends may, have made, Crybaby Bridge one of Ohio's most infamous paranormal sites, drawing both thrill seekers and investigators, but locals warn that the place carries a darkness far deeper than just a scary story. Some even claim that those, who mock the cries or shout into the darkness are then cursed with very bad luck for weeks afterward. Which bridge would you dare to cross? Me? None, but you do you. I'm your host, Ashley. Until next time, stay spooky. These terrifying creature sightings that were caught on camera remain unexplained to this very day. Scared yet? You should be. Turn the lights on. We're about to get into it. The Fresno Nightcrawler. It's 2 a.m. in Fresno, California. A man wakes up to his dog barking uncontrollably. Now, at first he thinks it's just a raccoon, maybe a stray cat, but when he checks the security footage, he sees something that has haunted him literally for the rest of his life. Slowly crossing his front yard are two impossibly thin, pale, human-like legs. No torso, no arms, no face, just a pair of ghostly limbs kind of gliding silently through the darkness. Now, this was the first ever recorded sighting of what would become known as the Fresno Nightcrawler. Now, the witness, identified only as Jose, was too terrified to even leave his house. He brought the tape to Univision and later to paranormal investigators. Now, desperate for answers, the creature's movement was eerily smooth, almost like it was floating, but its knees bent in a way that made it look unsettlingly kind of organic, like it was alive. Since that first sighting, the Fresno Nightcrawler has been caught on camera only a handful of times, including a very famous video from Yosemite National Park back in 2011. Now, in that footage, two of the creatures can actually be seen strolling casually along a trail, their kind of spindly legs and strange walk making them look like something from a nightmare. Honestly, skeptics Critics have claimed it could be puppetry, a prank, or even a costume, but no one has ever produced, definitive proof or recreated the footage in a very convincing way. Native American legends from the Fresno area describe similar beings, small leg-like spirits said to be kind of guardians of the land. Could these beings be something ancient, or are they something else entirely? Maybe something we're not meant to understand. The Screaming Bridge of Ohio. They say if you drive across this bridge at night and turn off your engine, you'll hear a woman's scream cut through the silence. Not just any scream, but a kind of blood-curdling cry of someone in their final moments. Welcome to the Screaming Bridge of Maud Hughes Road of Liberty Township in Ohio, which is one of the darkest and most unsettling spots in the entire state. The exact origin of the name is debated, but locals argue on one thing. Tragedy has claimed this bridge again and again and again. The earliest stories date back over a century when a young woman was either struck by a train or leapt to her passing after being abandoned by a lover. Her final scream, they say, left an imprint so strong that it echoes across the bridge even today. But that was just the beginning. In the 1960s, a group of teenagers passed away in a very horrific car accident on the bridge. They were out late at night laughing and blasting music when suddenly their vehicle swerved and smashed into the railing. Some believe it was reckless driving, others insist the driver swore he saw a figure appear in front of the car right before the crash. Since then, countless witnesses claim to have seen shadowy shapes darting across the road at the exact spot of the collision. Drivers who stop on the bridge say they've also experienced some of the most terrifying paranormal activity imaginable. Handprints appearing on their car windows, loud pounding on the roof, and in some cases their engines refusing to start until the haunting noises stop. People walking across the bridge have described sudden bursts of icy wind, phantom footsteps following them, and even voices whispering their names. Police have had to patrol the bridge at night to stop teenagers from daring each other to spend the night there, but officers themselves admit there's something wrong about the place. One officer, who never gave his name publicly, told a local paper that he once pulled over to check out a stalled car on the bridge. When he walked towards the vehicle, he heard a scream so sharp and close that he spun around expecting to see a woman standing behind him. There was no one there. With its long record of passings, tragic love, and ghostly screams that refuse to fade, the Screaming Bridge continues to terrify those who are brave or foolish enough to cross it after dark. Emily's Bridge in Stowe, Vermont. Now picture this, you're crossing a quiet covered wooden bridge in the middle of Vermont. The moonlight barely kind of filters through the trees, the wood creaks under your steps, and just when you think you're alone, you hear a sob. Not just any sob, but the sound of a girl crying in heartbreak. That's Emily. Emily's Bridge, officially called Goldbrook Bridge, has one of the most enduring ghost stories in New England. Built in 1844, it looks charming by day, a classic red-covered bridge you'd see on postcards, but at night it's something else entirely. The most well-known legend says Emily was a young woman in the 1800s who planned to elope with her lover. She was supposed to meet him at the bridge and escape her very strict family, but when she arrived, he never showed up. Some say he abandoned her, others claimed her parents intervened. Heartbroken and humiliated, Emily actually unalived herself from the rafters of the bridge. Now, in darker retelling, she may have actually jumped into the river and drowned, but since then, her restless spirit has haunted the bridge. Drivers crossing it report deep scratches suddenly appearing on their cars as if clawed by an invisible hand. Some claim to hear the echo of footsteps running across the wooden planks even when no one else is around. Paranormal investigators have caught chilling EVPs of a woman's voice crying out or whispering in despair. Now, visitors on foot often feel Emily's presence in a very physical way. People describe being touched, scratched, even shoved. One local swore he saw a faint glowing figure at the center of the bridge, only for it to disappear when his flashlight hit it. Another group of teens claimed they heard a loud female scream echo across the valley at midnight, though no one else was around. Now, the town of Stowe doesn't shy away from the ghost stories. Emily's Bridge has become a paranormal tourist attraction, drawing ghost hunters from literally across the country. What makes it compelling is that the stories are so consistent. Different people, from skeptics to believers, all reporting very similar eerie encounters, and perhaps most disturbing, many locals refuse to cross the bridge after dark. They'll happily take the long way around instead of tempting Emily's wrath. Goatman's Bridge in Denton, Texas. Some haunted bridges are eerie, some are tragic, and then there's the Goatman's Bridge in Denton, Texas, a place with a legend so terrifying it was built actually in 1884, and for decades it served as a simple passage between Denton and Copper Canyon. But in the 1930s, a horrifying story changed its reputation forever. Now, according to local legend, a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn lived near the bridge. He was respected in the community, known for his honesty and success, but in the Jim Crow era, that success came, of course, at a price. white supremacists, specifically the Triple K people, you know who I'm talking about, targeted him. One night they dragged him to the bridge and actually kind of basically just threw him up from his trusses, and when they returned to retrieve his body, it was gone. Now the K members panicked and burned his house down, unaliving his whole family inside. From that day forward, the bridge was cursed. People began reported sightings of a half-man, half-go figure haunting the bridge, glowing red eyes in the woods, heavy hooves on the bridge at night, and kind of just growls coming from the darkness. Now, drivers said their headlights would suddenly go out while crossing, followed by banging on the car roof as if something was trying to claw its way in. Paranormal investigators have documented extreme phenomena here. Now, some visitors report feeling overcome with violent anger, or even temporary possession as though something was inside them. Others have seen shadow figures darting across the bridge or smelled sulfur, a classic sign of something demonic. Now, perhaps the most infamous dare is to go to the bridge at night and shout "Goatman" 3 times. People who heard it or tried it say they've seen a horned figure appear at the other end of the bridge waiting for them. Some even swear they were chased away by unseen footsteps pounding after them. This combination of a brutal real-life hate crime and decades of terrifying supernatural reports makes Goatman's Bridge one of the most feared haunted sites in America. It's not just a ghost story, it's a place tied to human cruelty, tragedy, and something darker lurking in the shadows. Collingwood Arts Center in Toledo, Ohio. Now, the Collingwood Arts Center is not only one of the oldest buildings in Toledo, but it's also considered one of the city's most haunted places. The Collingwood Arts Center is a registered historical site, once home to a convent. Now, past supernatural sightings include orbs being seen and photographed throughout the facility. There's also a rumor the basement is haunted by the ghost of a nun who passed away down in its depths. Now, unsurprisingly, there has been, ghostly sightings of other nuns throughout the building. Both a friendly and oppressive presence have been ascribed to the different specters who haunt the hallways and the attic. Now, there's even been reports of piano music being played late at night. The Arts Center offers ghost tours, allowing visitors to explore the building and experience the alleged paranormal activity. While the tour is spooky, it does not include jump scares, and VIPs can actually gather for, light snacks and drinks tastings and have access to equipment to borrow, so give it a visit. South Bass Island Lighthouse in Put-in-Bay, Ohio. Now, visitors to the lighthouse report creepy footsteps, slamming doors, and unexplained noises coming from the lighthouse. Eerily, the origin of one notable ghost, thought to actually haunt the building is a century-old mystery. Prior to a smallpox outbreaks in 1898, Sam Anderson had been hired to look after the island lighthouse. Now, when police went to check on Anderson and make sure he hadn't left the quarantine area, they discovered his body at the bottom of a cliff near the lighthouse. Samuel Anderson's demise was ruled actually a self-inflicted tragedy, yet rumors circulated of a more evil demise. Some believe he'd been pushed and his restless soul was doomed to haunt the lighthouse. The basement where Samuel Anderson lived is a focal point of the alleged hauntings, with some believing his spirit lingers there. States that some people state as well that the lighthouse is one of the most haunted must-see places in Ohio. Riders Inn, located in Painesville, Ohio. So the hotel, which dates back to 1812, was originally built as a stagecoach stop along the Oregon Trail. Now, later it served as a station to basically the Underground Railroad and a speakeasy in the 1920s. Now, the hotel's storied past offers guests a very unique chance to kind of embrace Ohio's history during their stay. Riders Inn was built by Elias Pryor, who was a local prominent farmer. Many believe that Pryor's spirit still roams the inn, watching over his former home. Its most notorious ghost is Suzanne, who's the late wife of the hotel's owner, who passed shortly after their wedding. She's actually been seen throughout the property, and some accounts mention her coming to the hotel door in her nightgown, where she proceeds to let guests inside, if the hotel owners, of course, aren't around. Also, according to legend, a young girl passed in the inn as well, and her spirit remains often seen playing or running through the halls as little kids would. Now, there's been lots of reports of guests seeing ghostly figures, hearing unusual noises, and some have speculated that because the inn's location is actually built on Native American land, that might contribute to the paranormal activity as well. The inn to this day will host various events such as, mystery dinners, ghost-themed parties, and paranormal conferences. So it's a must-visit destination if you're a ghost enthusiast, history buff, or just looking for a really unique experience should you find yourselves in Painesville. The Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. Once serving as a state prison, the Ohio State Reformatory housed more than 150,000 inmates throughout its time. This haunted Ohio prison, which is also called the Mansfield Reformatory, has just led to several ghost sightings. Today at the Ohio State, Reformatory, there were several types of paranormal events that have happened, and there's also events that are available for visitors looking to experience its haunted history firsthand. Now, otherworldly presences, at the Ohio State Reformatory include a guard making his round and a shadow person in a former administrative office area on the 3rd floor. Visitors also say they experience strong energy and very unsettling emotions, which is attributed to, the more than 200 people, including 2 guards, who actually passed away in the prison. Lastly, we have the Majestic Theater in Chillicothe, Ohio, known as America's oldest continuously operating theater. Now, the Majestic Theater has been screening into the hearts of film fans since 1853. The restored Masonic, opera house offers live comedy, movie nights, special events, and a few ghosts as well. The Majestic Theater is actually said to be haunted due in large part to its use as a temporary morgue during the Spanish flu epidemic that swept through nearby, Camp Sherman in 1918. Now, bodies were stacked in the dressing rooms beneath the stage as a holding place until they could be embalmed on the stage, basically. Now, the ghost of a little girl appears to haunt this very historic theater. Past paranormal investigations have actually captured her presence on audio recordings, but she's not the only ghost in this haunted place. Visitors have also reported a very unsettling presence in the hallway and a man dressed in a suit and tie. He's been spotted actually walking up the aisles towards the stage. Starting with the Thurber House in Columbus, Ohio. James Thurber lived in the house from 1913 to 1917, and during his time there, he suffered from various health issues, including a detached retina, which left him almost blind. In 1915, Thurber's brother, William, passed away in the house due to complications from a burst appendix. Currently, the Thurber House is a museum dedicated to the American author and cartoonist who lived there and even experienced ghostly encounters of his own. But centuries ago, the property was built on traces of the Ohio Lunatic Asylum, specifically near the State of Ohio Asylum for the Insane Cemetery. Now, in 1868, the Ohio Lunatic Asylum burned down and the land was divided into 3 residential parts, one of which later became the Thurber House. People who visit the house say they've seen books flying off the shelves and heard footsteps on the back staircase, as well as doors creaking and doors opening and closing on their own. While there's rumors some of the ghostly activity is Thurber, others wonder if it's the distressed spirits from the psychiatric hospital that used to be on the grounds. Licking County Historic Jail in Newark, Ohio. At least 22 confirmed fatalities happened at Licking County Jail, which opened in 1889, and it's said to be one of the most haunted places in Ohio. The 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates who met untimely demises at the jail are thought to be some of the source of most of the building's ghostly activity. There are reports of disembodied voices calling out, cell doors slamming shut on their own, plus sounds of footsteps and kind of jingling keys. It was built in 1889 and operated until 1979. And during its 90-year run, it housed thousands of inmates, all for various crimes, of course. The jail witnessed numerous tragic events, including riots resulting in fatalities, escapes, and even executions. The traumatic energy from these events have had a lasting residual energy that's felt throughout the whole prison. The jail has been investigated by numerous paranormal teams, including ghost hunters and ghost adventures. They've captured evidence of paranormal activity, including audio and video recordings of just unexplained phenomena. Some visitors even say they've had someone whisper in their ear and seen shadowy figures accompanied by, strange lights. If you'd like to visit, you can. They offer guided tours, so if you're brave enough, go for it. The Ridges at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. The 700-acre property was originally the site of the Athens Lunatic Asylum, opening in the 1800s, built exactly in 1874 for the purpose of providing care and treatment to the mentally ill. The asylum eventually closed down, and the vacant land and buildings transferred to Ohio University around 1993. Because the conditions many patients at the asylum endured, many people believe that their restless spirits haunt the buildings that make up the Ridges. Now, in addition to the uneasy feelings, visitors also report hearing screams, rattling door handles, and figures that seem to vanish in thin air. More spooky encounters can actually be found by hiking the area. Now, basically, one of the trails leads to the Ridges Cemetery, where visitors actually say they encounter the graves of patients from the asylum. There have been numerous tragic events that have taken place here, including, a lot of patients passings, many fatally passed due to just poor living conditions, inadequate treatments, as well as tragic accidents. In the early 20th century, a tuberculosis outbreak swept through the asylum, claiming the lives of almost everyone there. And in 1936, a devastating fire ravaged the asylum's administration building. The building is actually still open to the public for tours and paranormal investigations. The Hackett Hotel in Marietta, Ohio. Built in 1899, this hotel has reported numerous ghost sightings throughout the building. While overnight guests report seeing, spectral figures, it's nothing compared to the presence that haunts the Galley restaurant. Now, housed in the old Hackett Hotel, the Galley is, basically it's a restaurant known for its food and atmosphere in the heart of historic Marietta. It was built in 1899, and the building was a popular local spot for decades, and was renovated in the 1980s into another restaurant, at which point the ghosts made themselves very known, and the ghostly activity has continued, from bottles crashing to the floor, glasses flying off shelves, and chairs screeching across empty rooms. The spectral incidents are so frequent, many staffers have actually come to believe it's the work of the same ghost, one that they actually named Charlotte. The Franklin Castle in Cleveland, Ohio. Starting in the 1960s, people reported flickering lights, sound of crying babies, and even the ghostly image of a woman in black, who some believe is the ghost of Hans Tiedeman's wife, Louise. Now, Hans Tiedemann was a wealthy German immigrant who built the home between 1881 and 1883, but his wife, Louise, passed in the house in 1895. He actually lost many of his family members in the house, including his own daughter. Hans passed himself under very mysterious circumstances in 1908, with some even speculating that he might have been assassinated. The building wasn't accessible to the public for years, but was recently converted into a haunted attraction. So you can now actually book an overnight stay at Franklin Castle, but be on the lookout for its guests who also roam the halls of this historic spot. People have claimed to have heard whispers, screams, banging, doors opening and closing, of course, on their own, lights flickering, objects moving on their own, and legend also has it that Hans built hidden rooms and secret passages within the mansion and may have even hid a treasure, although it's said to be cursed. Our Lady of the Angels Cathedral, located in Los Angeles, and this one is known as the Screaming Sanctuary. LA's massive Our Lady of the Angels Cathedral was actually built in 2002, so not that long ago, but beneath it lies the site of a 19th century cemetery. Now, during construction, workers uncovered human remains, and ever since, whispers of strange phenomena have followed the church. A priest actually reported that the confessional booths shake violently at night. One security guard actually quit after seeing a woman in a veil walk through a locked glass door, whispering, "You buried me wrong." And during a 2014 midnight mass, a live microphone picked up a scream that none of the people there could actually hear in person. Only those listening online heard it. Audio engineers couldn't explain it either, so it's still a mystery. But the Vatican sent an inquiry the next month, and even still, nada. So visit at your own risk, but report back if you do and let me know how that goes. Borgvattnet Church in Sweden. This one has a pastor that never left, reportedly. Now, the Borgvattnet Church in northern Sweden is so haunted, it was actually converted into a hotel for ghost hunters. Built in 1876, the rectory was home to many pastors who all reported violent poltergeist activity, and one claimed he was even thrown from his chair by invisible hands. Visitors who go here hear crying babies, doors slam on their own, and chairs that are rocking by themselves. Now, a photo from 1981 reportedly showed shows a woman in 19th century clothing floating in a hallway. Now, if you stay the night, you're actually given a certificate, but most don't actually make it until dawn. So one woman locked herself in the bathroom for hours, saying something was trying to crawl into her body. So you literally get a certificate if you make it. It's kind of like when a burger joint gives you a prize if you finish their like 20-pound burger in 30 minutes. Honestly, I love a good challenge. This one seems worth it to try. I mean, I'm not gonna go, but you go and come back and tell me if you made it. We'll be waiting. Stull Church in Kansas, USA, which is also known as the Devil's Gateway. Now, the Stull Cemetery and church are so feared, some locals won't actually say its name out loud. Legend says a hidden staircase beneath the church ruins leads directly to hell, and that the devil himself rises there twice a year, once on Halloween and once on the spring equinox. Now, the church was mysteriously torn down in the 90s at some point, but stories persist. Visitors have seen hooded figures appear behind gravestones and then just vanish. Electronics fail instantly, and one woman claims her unborn baby stopped kicking in her belly during her visit and only resumed movement when they actually left the grounds. So that's creepy. Even Pope John Paul II reportedly diverted his plane around Kansas to actually avoid flying over Stull. So yeah, this one is a no for me. I'm good. Notre Dame de la Garde in Marseille, France. Now, this is the Church of Unanswered Prayers. Known as the protector of sailors, this basilica in Marseille has a dark undercurrent. During storms, prayers are basically offered here to keep boats safe, but locals say if your prayer is rejected, you'll know instantly. Several fishermen have gone missing at sea after visiting the church and reportedly mocking its sacredness. Now, inside, people have heard whispers in Italian or Latin despite no one being nearby. A journalist caught a photo of what looks like a black shadow with horns looming in the upper gallery. Some visitors describe being overcome with grief and dread despite, entering feeling completely normal. Locals say the church knows who you are and what you've done. I don't need my dirty laundry aired out, so I'm gonna pass on this one. Poveglia Island Church in Italy. Now, this is the island of no return, as you know. Now, off the coast of Venice lies Poveglia Island, once a quarantine zone for plague victims and later home to an asylum. The island has a crumbling church where the bell tower still rings, even though the bell was removed years ago. Legend says a doctor who basically tormented patients threw himself from the tower after claiming he was being dragged to hell by ghosts. St. Mary's Church, located in Clope England, and better known as Satan's Ruins. In the sleepy village of Clope lies a ruined church that has become infamous for ritualistic black masses and grave desecrations. Now, in 1963, vandals broke into St. Mary's Church, exhumed corpses from the graveyard, and arranged human remains in occult symbols. It shocked the nation, and believe it or not, that was just the beginning. Since then, paranormal investigators have documented seeing glowing orbs, shadow figures moving among the tombstones, and cold winds sweeping through on calm nights. One psychic claimed the site radiates pure malevolence. Local legend says a secret underground chamber beneath the altars where initiations into satanic cults took place, and some claim it's actually still used today. The kicker? Phone and camera batteries reportedly drain instantly when you try to record there at night, so if you visit, be sure to pack a portable charger with you. The Church of the Nine Ghosts in the Philippines, known as the Possessed Parish. This one is hidden in the jungle outside Quezon and is a crumbling stone church locals call Simbahan Siam Namulto, which is the Church of Nine Ghosts. It's said to be haunted by 9 priests who were unalive during World War II. The church is now abandoned, yet travelers swear they've seen ghostly robbed men lined up in the pews just silently watching. Creepy, right? One backpacker took photos and later found 9 blurred figures behind her in every single image, and that's despite her being alone. There's even an audio recording where a woman's voice whispers "Bumalik ka," which is Filipino for "come back." Paranormal groups that investigated the scene reported sudden nausea, burns on their skin, and full body apparitions. Now, many refused to return there, so with that in mind, my recommendation is to not go. Old St. George's Church in the Czech Republic. Now, this one is known as the Living Statues. In 1968, the ceiling collapsed mid-service at Old St. George's Church in Lakova. Now, that incident sparked whispers of a curse, and eventually, the building was actually just left to rot. Now, years later, an artist installed dozens of ghostly statues resembling mourners frozen frozen in prayer, but visitors that go say the statues actually move. Some turn their heads, others disappear entirely, only to reappear the next day in a completely different pose. Tourists report extreme chills, phantom voices reciting Latin prayers, and sensations of being watched from inside the pulpit. One woman who went actually fainted while standing amongst the statues and claimed she saw the face of her deceased mother in one of them. That's just terrifying. Hekla Volcano, located in Iceland. Hekla Volcano in Iceland is Iceland's most feared volcano and famously known as the gateway to hell due to its history of explosive eruptions and the supernatural tales that have actually grown around it. It's said to be haunted by souls of the lost, and during the Middle Ages, Hekla's frequent eruptions and fiery displays fueled legends of it being a portal to the underworld. Locals have spoken about shadowy figures appearing and spirits that are actually trapped between the living world and the afterlife. Now, legends described witches meeting with the devil actually on its summit. Legends claim that souls of the condemned traveled through Hekla's crater on their way to hell, and that witches met with the devil on its summit. Now, birds flying near the summit were thought to be souls entering or leaving hell. The volcano's unpredictable nature with violent eruption, and ash clouds likely fueled these beliefs. Hekla is one of Iceland's most active volcanoes with over 20 eruptions since 1210. Its explosive nature and unpredictable eruptions further contributed to the gateway of hell imagery. Now, despite its fearsome reputation, Hekla remains a very popular hiking and climbing destination, and its volcanic activity is closely monitored. So, the gateway to hell myth has become part of Iceland's cultural heritage, kind of carved into stories that continue to intrigue visitors to this day. Stull Cemetery in Kansas, USA. Now, this apparently is the devil's favorite place on earth. Stull Cemetery has been the center of urban legends involving satanic rituals and a gateway to hell. The cemetery in Stull is most known for a portal to hell that the devil allegedly comes through twice a year. Travel editor Brock Wilbur said in a review, while the rumors sound outlandish, he said, the ruins of a nearby church and architecture, have people half believing that it is true. Stories from other locals also claim that the devil appears here twice, and a hidden staircase actually apparently leads directly to the underworld. There's lots of people online who have posted their experiences at Stull Cemetery and what they've noticed. Many people have claimed they saw the devil come up from the ground, and apparently during Halloween, police have to actually have it seriously shut down because so many people, especially young adults, try to go in there, I'm guessing to host like seances or something, but apparently that's when the devil himself comes out to play and treats the cemetery as his playground. People have seen shadows, heard footsteps, weird noises, you name it. Either way, there's a lot of talk and buzz about this place, and while largely debunked, the legend does persist, attracting a lot of curiosity and caution. Seven Gates of Hell in Pennsylvania, USA. Now, the Seven Gates of Hell is an urban legend in York County involving 7 gates in a wooded area of Pelham Township. The legend suggests that passing through all 7 gates will lead you to hell. There are 2 main versions of this legend, one about a burned down asylum, and apparently the patients were inside, and a search party built 7 gates around the area to try and capture the patients that escaped the fire, but then allegedly attacked the patients to their demise. And so these tormented souls continue to haunt the ground. And the other legend is actually about an eccentric doctor who built the gates to keep out trespassers. While the location is a popular tourist spot, it's privately owned and visitors may face trespassing charges, so don't go. In Pelham Township, legends speak, of these 7 gates, and those who pass through are said that they could enter hell. Now, according to local legend, one gate can be seen in daylight, apparently, even on Google Maps if you look it up, and the others you can actually only allegedly see at night once you're actually walking through each one. Now, despite the lack of factual basis, the legend has drawn a lot of interest, and the area is visited by tourists. Last on my list is Fendu Ghost City, located in China. Now, this is located on the Ming Mountain. Now, this ghost city is a complex of shrines and temples dedicated to the afterlife, a very unique site that represents Chinese beliefs about the afterlife. Now, it's a complex, of temples and monasteries that kind of depicts the gate to hell and other scenes related to the underworld, illustrating the concept of reward or punishment based on one's actions in life. Now, the city is known for its depiction, including, the road to hell as well, various forms of punishment, and the concept of a journey through the underworld, So basically, it includes the bridge of helplessness and the actual gate to hell. The city portrays the belief that the dead are judged and either rewarded or punished based on their deeds in life, with various forms of kind of torment and imagery representing negative actions. Visitors have experienced, a journey through this when they go to visit. So if you want to try it, go for it and let me know how it goes. The Darvaza Gas Crater in Turkmenistan, now also famously known as the door to hell. This fiery crater has been burning since 1971 after a Soviet drilling mishap. The story goes that the crater was formed after a natural gas drilling rig. Now, Turkmenistan has the fourth largest reserves of natural gas in the world, and it collapsed into an underground cavern back in 1971. Worried that methane gas would spread to the neighboring villages and cause issues, Soviet scientists set it on fire, expecting it to burn out within a few weeks. Over 4 decades later, it is still very much burning. The decision to ignite the gas to prevent methane spread led to an inferno that continues today. Now, its eerie glow in the Karakum Desert has made it a tourist attraction and a symbol of human error meeting natural forces. It's alleged that if you stand close to the edge, if you're brave enough of course, you can look down into the crater and see hundreds of flames erupting with great force from where the gas actually escapes. You can also get blasted with very hot air depending on how the wind, changes direction, and the noises, as you might expect, akin to that of a blowtorch. Though there is no smoke, it is natural gas after all. Mount Asor in Japan. Now, Mount Asor in Japan is a sacred Buddhist temple and pilgrimage site on the Shimokita Peninsula, known in Japanese folklore as the gateway to the underworld. Now, the desolate volcanic landscape and strong sulfur smell contribute to its reputation as a place of both hell and paradise, where souls pause before entering the afterlife. They believe that this is where souls kind of gather before crossing the Sanzu no Kawa, which is the river of 3 parts, to the afterlife. Now, the area is a volcanic wasteland with bubbling sulfur pits and howling winds, which adds to the eerie atmosphere. Blind women known as Itako, who have undergone extensive spiritual training, are believed to be able to communicate with the spirits of the dead at Osorizen, particularly during the Bodaji festival. This mysterious place is considered to be both hell and paradise as well, and as a power spot because it gets visited by many worshippers each year. Plutonian at Hierapolis in Turkey. Now, this ancient Greco-Roman site was believed to be an entrance to the underworld, dedicated to Pluto, the god of the dead. It is a site believed to be the gate to hell in Greco-Roman mythology. Now, it's a cave-like grotto where a high concentration of carbon dioxide emitted from a fissure in the Earth's surface made it deadly. The site was once believed to be a portal to the underworld where souls were taken by Charon, the mythical ferryman. Now, the Plutonian, also known as Pluto's Gate or Plutonium, was a shrine dedicated to Pluto, the Roman god of the underworld, and it was believed to be a gateway to Hades, the Greek underworld where the deceased resided. Now, pilgrims would make sacrifices to Pluto at the Plutonian and would enter in order to experience hallucinations, believing that the spirits of the sacrificed animals would be carried into the underworld. Now, scholars believe, though, that the sacrifices were performed at dawn to maximize the effect of the deadly gas. An ancient Greek historian who visited the Plutonian at Hierapolis about 2,000 years ago recorded that the priests could even place their heads within the gate to hell and suffer no ill effects. Lake Avernus in Italy, situated near Naples, this volcanic crater lake was considered by the Romans as the entrance to Hades. Its name derives from the Greek word for birdless, as birds were said to avoid the toxic fumes. Virgil's Aeneid describes Aeneas' descent into the underworld through a cave near this lake. The lake was associated with the Cumaean Sibyl, whose grotto and sanctuary were located nearby, and the grove of Hecate, a goddess associated with the underworld. During Roman Roman times, Lake Avernus was transformed into a naval base, Portus Julius by Agrippa. Now, the lake is located within a volcanic crater, and its sulfurous vapors contributed to the belief that it was the entrance to hell. The boundary between fact and fable at Lake Averno is intriguingly indistinct because a nexus where reason and myth overlap. Now, even the genius of Galileo Galilei, fortified by meticulous research and mathematical kind of prowess, theorized that Dante's Inferno entrance lay by this lake. Now, it was also open that the shadowed woods, Dante penned were, in truth, the dense forest encircling Lake Averno, stretching as far as the Solfataria of Pozzoli.
Next up is the LaLaurie Mansion. If you think Elizabeth Bathory was evil, just wait till you hear about Delphine LaLaurie. This mansion is said to be one of the most haunted places in New Orleans, and that is saying a lot, because New Orleans has a bit of a reputation for being rather paranormally active. The LaLaurie Mansion looks like a regular fancy house in the French Quarter, but the things that happened inside anything but normal. Back in the early 1830s, Madame Delphine LaLaurie and her husband Dr. Louis LaLaurie were part of the city's upper class. Delphine had the appearance of your typical wealthy socialite. She hosted parties, wore expensive clothes, and smiled for the neighbors. Elegant was probably the word most would use to describe her. But that changed. See, behind closed doors, things were incredibly grim. She owned enslaved people, which at the time was legal, but even by the standards of the day, people started noticing that something was very wrong. Neighbors would notice that her servants looked unusually thin. They'd often have bruises as well, and then they'd just disappear altogether. One day, a child fell from the roof after reportedly being chased up there by Delphine. Authorities finally forced her to give up her slaves, but this didn't do anything. Her relatives brought them back and returned them to her. Then in 1834, a fire broke out at the mansion. The woman who started it was an enslaved cook who later admitted she was trying to die rather than being taken upstairs again. Firefighters arrived and broke into the locked slave quarters, and what they found was a complete horror show. People were chained up, starving, injured. Some had been experimented on. A few were barely alive. Others were found buried on the property. When the public found out, they were furious. A mob stormed the house, trashed the place, and tried to find LaLaurie, but she'd already escaped. If you're waiting to hear the part about her finally getting her comeuppance, it never happened. She fled to Paris and never had to face any consequences. Today, the house has been remodeled, but it still stands. Some claim it's cursed, haunted by the spirits of those who suffered inside. But even if you don't believe in ghosts, the real history behind that house is disturbing enough on its own. And finally, we have the Sultan's Palace, also in New Orleans. This luxurious home was built in 1836 and was bought by a Turkish man claiming to be a sultan. Now, as soon as this man moved into this French Quarter home, things got completely out of hand, to put it very lightly. There were constant parties, he was always playing loud music, and he had this harem of women with him all the time. They'd apparently arrived from Turkey. But as to exactly what was going on in that house, there were only rumors, because no local had ever been invited inside. One morning, though, after a very stormy night, a man was walking down the streets of the French Quarter and noticed that there was this red liquid trickling down the steps from the Sultan's palace. It was streaming like a small river running through the cracks in the cobblestone. The man ran to the police, and what they discovered inside the home was a complete massacre. There was immediately this overwhelming metallic scent in the air from all the red stuff that was on the walls, on the floor, and there were body parts everywhere. A lot of them had been dismembered, limbs were scattered around the place. They continued through the house only to find more bodies until they made their way out to the courtyard. The soil was heavy and muddy from the large storm the night before, but sticking out from it was a hand with its fingers spread as if it was reaching to the sky for help. It was the hand of the Sultan, it turned out. He'd been buried alive. Obviously, The question was now, who did this? Some said that the Sultan wasn't really the Sultan at all, that he was the Sultan's brother and made off with all his money and his women, and so his brother hired a group of mercenaries to get rid of him. But till this day, it's still a mystery. Some people say the house is still haunted. First up, we have the Edmonton Haunted House. Now, I'm not clear as to the name of the owner of this house or the exact location, only that it is or was in Edmonton. This is a very old story dating back to 1909. So the owner would rent the house out, but they had a hard time securing regular tenants as each person who stayed there would rush out of the home, oftentimes in well under a month. An article at the time is quoted saying, "From time to time, parties of different nationalities have approached the owner of the house and rented it sometimes for a year, other times for only a few months. But generally, at the expiration of a few hours, they disappeared, bag and baggage, without even calling up the owner for a refund of the monies paid. The owner and his agent unaware of their departure until the next month's rent was due. Tenants would experience horrific paranormal activity in the home, with one story going that a tenant had locked himself in his room with furniture pressed up against the door. Somehow, the door opened on its own, and from the dark hallway beyond, he heard this terrible, disembodied groaning sound. Another story goes that an Asian businessman rented out the home with 4 of his workers. They were planning to operate a laundry business from the home. They didn't even make it through the first night and ran out of the place screaming in the middle of the night, only showing up again the next morning to grab all their things. Next up is the Los Feliz house, which sat abandoned in LA's Los Feliz neighborhood for a long time. It was only just recently sold in 2020. I won't give the exact address for obvious reasons, but this house was pretty infamous for a disturbing incident on December 6th, 1959. Dr. Harold Perelson and his family lived at the home. Perelson was a pretty successful guy, obviously. I mean, he owned a mini mansion, but at some point his mental state started to deteriorate, and the nail in the coffin was when he was screwed out of the rights to a new syringe that he'd invented, having invested a ton of money in it. This is seemingly what threw him over the edge, and on that night in December, he snapped, killing his wife in her sleep with a hammer. Then he moved on to his eldest daughter's room. As soon as he struck her with the hammer, though, she let out a scream, pleading for her life as her father told her to lay still and keep quiet, while the other siblings woke up, all running out into the hallway to find out what was going on, and miraculously, they all managed to escape. Neighbors had heard the commotion and they phoned the police. By the time authorities arrived at the home, though, Dr. Harold had taken his own life. A copy of Dante's The Divine Comedy was left open on his nightstand, with the opening passage of the page reading, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost." What was said to be the most haunted house in England? Well, if you were to ask people back in the day, they'd probably tell you about this place called the Borley Rectory. It was infamous for supposedly being haunted long before it burned down in 1939 and was demolished for good in 1944. Built in 1863 for Reverend Henry Bull, the place quickly got a reputation for all the strange things that would happen there. The land itself was supposedly cursed thanks to a legend dating back centuries. The story goes that a monk and a nun fell in love, tried to run off together, and got caught. The monk was executed and the nun was sealed up alive in a wall to die. So when the rectory was eventually built on that same ground, people believed the place was just no good. People who lived there over the years would tell stories about all your classic haunted house stuff, hearing unexplained footsteps, seeing faces in windows, hearing bells ringing on their own. Some also said they saw ghostly figures wandering the halls. It got so intense that the Daily Mirror sent out an investigator, Harry Price, in 1929. He was one of the first people to take a scientific approach to ghost hunting. He brought cameras, fingerprint kits, and devices to track temperature and movement. Well, he claimed to see some stuff and hear some stuff. He'd see objects fly across rooms, hear weird whispers from the dark, empty rooms. Then Reverend Lionel Foister and his wife, Marianne, moved in, and it didn't go well. Marianne especially seemed to be targeted. Forget seeing or hearing things, she'd tell her husband that she'd be slapped and scratched and pushed, but not by anything she could see. Messages would also appear scrawled across the walls that no one could explain, and they only showed up when she was around. And the couple didn't last long there and ended up moving out, but the investigator, Harry Price, he stuck around, trying to make sense of what was going on. During one seance, Price claimed that he learned the names of the monk and nun from the original legend. Another session ended with a spirit predicting that the rectory would burn down, and in the wreckage the nuns' bones would be found. Well, a year later, the place caught fire, and in the ruins the body of a young woman was discovered in the cellar. Nobody could say for sure who she was, but she was given a proper burial. After that, the haunting supposedly stopped.
Grand Canyon National Park. This national park is a vast mile-deep canyon carved by the Colorado River over millions of years, showcasing a unique geological history and diverse ecosystems in northwestern Arizona. The canyon's formation began approximately 6 million years ago, with the Colorado River carving its way through the Colorado Plateau. Now, the canyon is up to 18 miles wide and 6,000 feet deep in some places. At the time of this disappearance, Morgenheimer was working for a rafting company called Tour West, which provided guided tours through the Grand Canyon. On day 6 of an 8-day trip, Heimer vanished in the Pumpkin Springs area of the park. The lead guide was speaking to Heimer when he was distracted by a client. When he went to speak to Heimer again, the young man was just gone. The guide didn't think much of it at first, believing Heimer had simply just wandered off, but when 3 hours had gone by without a word, Heimer was officially declared missing. An extensive search lasting 6 days was carried out, but to no avail. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. One of the most famous missing person stories involving a forest is the disappearance of Dennis Lloyd Martin in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in 1969. Now, Dennis Lloyd Martin, a 6-year-old boy, vanished on June 14th, 1969, while on a family outing at Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Martin disappeared on June 14th while surprising his adults with actually his brother and other children from a separate family the Martins were camping with. He was last seen by his father going behind a bush to hide, intending on surprising the adults with the other children. Now, after not seeing him for about 5 minutes, and when all of the other children had returned to the campsite, his father became concerned and began searching for him. His father ran down the trail for nearly 2 miles until he was sure he could not have gotten any farther. Now, after several hours, they sought help from National Park Service rangers, and the search effort was extensive, involving approximately 1,400 searchers and covering a 56 square mile area, but no trace of Dennis was ever found. The disappearance does remain a cold case, with the National Park Service still investigating to this day. Green Mountain National Forest. The Green Mountain National Forest, or GMNF, is the only federally managed national forest in Vermont, encompassing over 400,000 acres in southwestern and central Vermont, offering very diverse landscapes, wildlife, and recreation opportunities. Now, the Vermont State Police exists because of Paula Jean Weldon. Weldon was an 18-year-old college student who decided to walk the long trail in Vermont. Weldon hitchhiked from school to the trail, and when she failed to return for her studies, her roommate notified the administrators. They in turn, contacted the authorities, and a massive search for Weldon was undertaken. It involved the National Guard, firefighters, and even students from the school, which had closed to help in the search. But despite the extensiveness, nothing came of it, and the resulting investigation was fiercely criticized for being shoddy. Just 7 months later, the Vermont State Police was created to prevent such poorly run investigations in the future. Paula Jean was never found. Her family is still searching for answers. The community still wants to know what happened, and sadly, I don't think anyone ever will know. This is not the first and only case, though. It's been reported that this forest is responsible for the disappearance of upwards of 20 plus people within the last 20 years alone. Ozark-Francis National Forest in Arkansas. Many of the biggest national park disappearances start the same way. A family or group visits a national park, one member wanders, and no trace of them is ever found. It's an unsettling pattern that has led to many, of the monster stories that surround these national parks. It's also exactly what the poor Van Els family experienced on a summer day in Ozark-St. Francis National Park in 1946. 8-year-old Catherine Van Els was playing with her siblings in the woods near her campsite. The brothers looked away for just a moment, and suddenly she was just gone. While many national park mysteries are there, or end there, should I say, Catherine's story somehow gets stranger. A huge search was launched launched, combing every mile of the forest. 6 days after her disappearance, volunteers wandered by a cave 30 miles from where Catherine went missing. Out crawled little Catherine, who casually just waved and said, "Here I am." Catherine had very little memory of the last 6 days, mentioning she ate berries and drank water from the cave. She made very odd remarks about sleeping in warm grass and finding herself in the cave, and always seemed very, calm about the whole ordeal, which was weird. Search and rescue teams were equally as confused. They had searched the exact area with equipment and dogs twice. Why had Catherine not been found on either of those previous sweeps? As strange as the circumstances are, the Van Els family got a rare happy ending to their National Park missing persons case. The Black Forest in Germany. A photograph purportedly showing Germany's Black Forest is frequently circulated on social media, along with the claim that the wooded area caused 15,000 missing persons cases last year. While some people have challenged the picture and said it's fake news, others have openly discussed the topic and argued that there may be a lot of truth to it, because it's been alleged that an unusually high number of people have in fact gone missing there. The Black Forest in Germany is known for its dense woodlands, picturesque landscapes, and folklore, but it has also been associated with various disappearances over the years that have basically turned into cold cases. While some stories and legends highlight mysterious cases, the region is not particularly notorious for ongoing disappearances. Now, most reported cases are often related to hiking accidents, lost individuals, or people who have chosen to go off the grid. The forest's vastness and, rugged terrain could make it easy for people to just become disoriented or lost. Additionally, the area has a very rich history of myths and legends, which can sometimes exaggerate the perception of danger or mystery. One particular case of a missing person is that of a woman named Scarlett. Scarlett was a student at Bad Lippensprungen, which is North Rhine-Westphalia, who traveled to the Black Forest area on September 4th, 2020 to go on a 74-mile hike. She's very slim, long blonde hair, and was wearing a red backpack, very noticeable. Now, the hike along there is obviously done in multiple stages. Scarlett had successfully completed the first 5 out of 6 stages when she disappeared and had spent the night at a hotel. Now, the town, that marks the starting point of the last stage of the hike. This last confirmed sighting of her was at 10:10 a.m. on the 10th of September. Scarlett was filmed by surveillance cameras while shopping at a supermarket. Now, she also sent a text message through WhatsApp to her family. It is not known, if she actually, started the planned stage of the hike that day, since her phone was last located in Totmos. Now, what's unusual about this last sighting is that there are witnesses for the other days and stages of her hike, but not for this one. Police, family members, volunteers search extensively for Scarlett using drones, helicopters, and man trailers, but nothing has been found. No traces of an accident, any of her equipment or supplies, just nothing. The police are still looking for witnesses, but their main theory seems to be that some sort of accident happened. It has been said that the only way she hasn't been found if it was an accident, so would be, if Scarlett left the main path as well. Yosemite National Park. Some people are born for the outdoors, and Michael Fiercery was one of them. This man pushed aside a conventional lifestyle to live one of adventure and exploration. In 2005, he decided to take a hike solo through Yosemite National Park, and not just the touristy areas, of Yosemite either, but the parts reserved for the very hardcore adventures. Michael was very independent and liked to live off the grid, so it wasn't until, his wilderness permit expired that people realized something was terribly wrong. A massive search was instigated basically, and even involved the Marines. Now, they quickly found Michael's backpack, which spelled very bad news and greatly concerned his family, of course. Unfortunately, no other trace of Michael has ever been found. This park is responsible for a lot of people having gone missing. One person on Reddit shared their experience and said on their first trip there, they were hiking up to the mist trail with a crowd in the morning. Someone started taking pictures of something on the hill on the left side of the path, not the side with the view. So naturally, everyone passing stopped and started looking. Just above the path was a baby bear, just vibing, walking around, super cute. It eventually started walking back up the hill, and that's when the weird thing happened. 2 boys, probably around 10 or 11 years old, just started walking up the hill after the bear. Now, off the path into the bush, no parent yelling after them, no one was with them, not even a parent standing around, that spot on the path, like asking if anyone saw where their kids went. No idea what became of this. The person jokingly said, hopefully the mama bear, took them in as one of their own and they now live as bears, but the best possible income would be that. So it's not just unexplained disappearances that happen there, but other weird, unexplainable things as well. Centralia, Pennsylvania. This is the town that's still burning today. Beneath the surface of Centralia, Pennsylvania, a fire has been burning for over 60 years. In 1962, a landfill fire accidentally ignited a coal seam that still smolders underground to this day. Now, roads buckle, smoke pour from cracks in the ground, the air reeks of sulfur and scorched earth, but it's not just the physical danger that's terrifying there. There are also chilling supernatural claims. Former residents and visitors have reported hearing voices in the smoke, including cries for help coming from beneath the ground. Some say that they've seen shadow figures moving inside the fog as well. A local priest once declared the land was cursed, saying the mine opened a gate to hell. And get this, Centralia directly inspired the ghostly town of Silent Hill in the video game and movie series. Today, only a few homes remain standing, but even those are technically illegal to inhabit, so don't go. A highway into town called Graffiti Highway has since been covered by the state to keep people out. Humberstone and LaNoria in Chile, which is a grave-robbing ghost town. Now, in the middle of Atacama Desert sit two mining towns kind of frozen in time and surrounded by demise. Now, Humberstone and LaNoria were once bustling with nitrate miners, but exploitation, brutal working conditions, and disease kind of decimated the population. Now they're full-blown ghost towns, and I mean that literally. Decades ago, grave robbers looted local cemeteries, leaving open coffins, shattered bones, and disturbed tombs under the desert sun. The result? Well, a spike in paranormal activity so intense that even scientists started paying attention. Visitors have captured apparitions walking across dusty streets. In EVP sessions, ghost hunters recorded chilling messages in Spanish, some sounding like miners screaming for help. Now, there are also reports of small, childlike figures appearing in doorways and then just vanishing into thin air. And the temperature often drops nearly 20 degrees inside these abandoned homes. Kadara, India, the village that disappeared overnight. Now, 2 centuries ago, the entire population of Kadara, around 1,500 people or so, vanished literally overnight. Now, according to legend, they left behind a curse so powerful that no one has ever been able to live there again. The story goes that a powerful minister demanded to marry a village girl against her will. Rather than surrender her, the entire community evacuated in secret, leaving behind food, clothes, and livestock. Before they left, they cursed the land, though. Now, attempts to resettle Kadara have failed, spectacularly. Farmers have found their animals kind of passed away overnight. Tourists reported disembodied voices and the sensation of being watched from behind. And there's also crumbling walls. Paranormal teams from around the world, including India's own ghost hunting societies, have visited Kadara and nearly all report very unexplained activity. Oradour-sur-Glane in France, which is a villain frozen in mass execution. On June 10th, 1944, SS troops executed 642 people in the quiet village of Oradour-sur-Glane, including over 200 children. The town was left exactly as it was found: burnt out buildings, rusted bikes, sewing machines, and ashes. Now, the French government declared it a historical monument, but what's never been officially acknowledged is the heavy, suffocating presence that lingers there. Tourists report intense waves of sadness, seeing children's shadows darting between buildings, and hearing, basically just loud noises echoing in the distance. Some say they've heard the church bell ring, even though it was melted in the fire. Now, psychics who visited the site describe it as one of the most emotionally overwhelming places in Europe, so thick with sorrow it almost, takes you out. Now, these aren't ghost stories made up to sell books. These are places you can still visit if you dare. Calabro, Italy, the town where saying its name brings misfortune. Locals won't even say its name, they just call it that town. Calabro sits high in the hills of southern Italy, and it has a reputation so toxic that, so much as whisper in the town and its surrounding villages, people actually spit on the ground to ward off evil. It all began when a high-powered lawyer declared in court, "If I'm lying, may this chandelier fall." And it did, right onto the courtroom floor. Nobody was hurt, but from that moment on, Calabria was doomed. Now, over the next few decades, people in nearby areas blamed the town for everything from sudden passings to car crashes to crops falling. One popular theory is that the curse comes from La Catre, which is a mysterious woman said to be a witch who lived in isolation and was blamed for casting evil spells on men who rejected her. Now, even tourists report electronics malfunctioning as soon as they enter the village. There are stories of people experiencing sudden nosebleeds, dizzy spells, and even blackouts while walking through its eerily quiet streets. The town capitalizes on the myth with an annual festival, but the locals, they keep their distance. Dudleytown, Connecticut, the village that drove people mad. Now, deep in the woods of Connecticut, a once thriving settlement is now completely erased from modern maps. Dudleytown has no street signs, no population, just rumors, whispers, warnings. It was founded in the 1740s by a family whose bloodline was supposedly cursed after involvement in English royal scandals. Now, over time, the town became a vortex of tragedy. Residents suffer horrific losses, entire families passed away by taking their own lives, people went mad or just vanished, and when the town basically just dissolved after that. Now, today, the woods that cover Dudleytown are eerily silent, no birds, no bugs. Paranormal investigators call it a dead zone. Visitors report overwhelming panic, nausea, and unexplained scratches appearing on their bodies. Even Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures refused to film an episode there, calling it one of the most dangerous locations in America. The Dark Entry Forest Association now owns the land and bans public access, but thrill seekers still sneak in. Some never make it back out without being changed in some terrifying way. Aokigahara in Japan, which is the forgotten cursed villages. Now, Aokigahara is infamous, the forest of doom, but what most people don't know is that on the edges of Aokigahara are forgotten villages that once practiced something darker than demise, Ab-Asut, which is the ancient and horrifying tradition of abandoning the sick and elderly in remote areas to just pass away. These ghost villages were already steeped in tragedy before the taking your own lives, epidemic took hold. Now, locals believe that by leaving loved ones to pass in the forest, they'd avoid starvation for the rest of the family, during famine. It wasn't assassination, it was a sacrifice to them. Now, today, these villages are beyond repair, buildings half swallowed by vines and rot, shrines toppled over, and homes, still containing, tattered futons and rusted utensils. Visitors who enter often return with stories of spirits following them home, cameras that refuse to work, and a very eerie sense of being watched. Even Japanese psychics refuse to go near the forest, saying it's filled with yuri, which is restless souls trapped between life and the afterlife, angry at how they passed. Pripyat, Ukraine, the ghost town time forgot. Now, on April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. Within 36 hours, over 49,000 people fled the nearby town of Pripyat. Now, what they left behind is a time capsule of nuclear terror, schools with half-marked tests, homes with dinner still on the table, and dolls' heads littering the streets, literally. But the radiation isn't the only thing that stuck around. Paranormal investigators have documented cold spots in the warm summer months, sudden drops in temperature, phantom footsteps, and the sound of children giggling in the empty amusement park there. Now, one former resident swore she saw her mother standing in a window of their old apartment 15 years after she passed. Others have reported glowing humanoid figures appearing near the reactor. There's even a legend about the Blackbird of Chernobyl, a winged humanoid figure that dozens claimed to see before the disaster. So eyewitnesses, described red eyes and deafening screeches, and once the explosion occurred, well, the sighting stopped. Coincidence or something much more terrifying? The DeRidder Jail, located in DeRidder, Louisiana. Locals call it the hanging jail, and the name itself, isn't just for show. In 1928, 2 men convicted of executing a taxi driver were sent to the scaffold right inside the jail to be taken out, which was, at the time, a very rare and brutal public execution that set the tone for the building's eerie legacy. Now, the jail was built in 1914 and has been abandoned for decades, but investigators and visitors swear it's anything but empty. Cold spots, disembodied voices, ghostly apparitions have been reported throughout the decaying cells. Now, some visitors say they hear a woman weeping softly near cell number 3, despite the jail never having housed any female inmates. So my guess would be like a widow, maybe a girlfriend, a mother. I don't know. I'm just trying to run through like what would make the most sense as to why a woman would go and hang out there, but whatever. The actual hanging chamber remains intact, complete with the original trapdoor and lever. Now, paranormal groups have documented strange electromagnetic spikes in the gallows room and caught shadowy figures darting across camera lenses. So imagine, if you will, like a typical jump scare in your favorite scary movie. If that's not enough, during one overnight tour, a man claimed he actually felt someone grab his ankle and there was no one near him. Another visitor collapsed in the gallows room, later saying she felt like someone was trying to pull her down with them. Oh my god, the horror, just imagine. Now remind me to never go visit there. I'm good on that one, thanks. St. Louis Cemetery number 1 in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now New Orleans has plenty of haunted cemeteries, as you'd imagine, but St. Louis Cemetery number 1, founded in 1789, is the crown jewel of the departed. It's the final resting place of Marie Laveau, the infamous voodoo queen, whose power still terrifies skeptics and believers alike. Speaking on this queen, in case you don't know anything at all about her, well, she was a real historical figure, a big deal, a Creole woman who practiced a mix of, Catholicism and voodoo in the 1800s and was known for her healing, spiritual readings, as well as rumored curses. Now, since her passing in 1881, people claim to have seen her wandering between the tombs, wearing a red and white headscarf and clutching a snake. Very specific and also very creepy, right? Visitors leave, offerings as a way to appease her and basically hope she doesn't attack them or curse them. I mean, many people leave like lipstick, rum, coins, etc. And they also do this though to ask for favors, but disrespect her grave and it's said she'll follow you. Like, not just around the premises, no, she'll follow you home. One tourist reportedly kicked over an offering and later woke up at home with scratch marks on his back and bruises in the shape of fingers. Even seasoned tour guides refused to walk certain rows alone. Other graves in the cemetery also hold secrets. Phantom figures are seen peeking out from behind tombs, and multiple guests have caught orbs and strange mists on camera, especially around dusk. Now, this place sounds like something straight out of my nightmares. I feel like I've been there before, again, in a nightmare. I don't think I care to visit in person, so if you do, let me know how that goes, and remember not to disrespect her. Maybe bring some lipstick, maybe MAC or like a YSL one. Dollar brand won't get you anywhere with her. Starting with the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. It's called one of America's most haunted homes, and honestly for good reason. At first glance, the Myrtles Plantation looks like a dreamy slice of Southern history, complete with moss-draped oaks and a wraparound porch, but don't let that charm fool you. This place is riddled with spirits. The most infamous ghost, well, Chloe. Legend says she was an enslaved woman punished for eavesdropping by having her ear cut off. In retaliation, she allegedly baked a poisonous cake that unalived 2 young girls. Now, she was sent to the gallows, and ever since, people claim she appears in a green turban near the old slave quarters. A photograph taken in 1992 reportedly shows her standing actually between 2 buildings, a photo many believe is authentic. But she's not the only one. Guests have reported hearing children giggling late at night only to find empty hallways and nobody even there. Mirrors in the house show handprints on them that actually won't wipe off, and a grand piano in the parlor plays by itself, and quite beautifully apparently, but also, as you can imagine, quite eerily as well. And some guests have fled basically in the middle of the night after seeing full body apparitions standing at the foot of their beds. They literally said, yeah, no thanks, I think I'm gonna head out now. Now, the Myrtles have over 200 years of tragic history. From mysterious passings to Civil War violence, paranormal investigators have called it a hotbed of activity, with nearly every room said to have some sort of haunting. The LaLaurie Mansion, located in New Orleans in Louisiana. Even in a city known for its haunted past, the LaLaurie Mansion stands out as a nightmare frozen in time. Located in the heart of the French Quarter, which, if you're not familiar or never been to Mardi Gras, this is a paranormal super space riddled with paranormal activity. Anyway, this stately Creole mansion hides one of the most disturbing stories of cruelty and supernatural revenge in US history. Get ready and sit tight for this one, friends. Now, in the early 1800s, Madame Delphine LaLaurie was a socialite known for her wealth and influence, but also for the really horrific mistreatment of the enslaved people in her home. In 1834, a kitchen fire led authorities to the attic where they discovered discovered a secret torment chamber. Victims were found chained, mutilated, and barely alive. Some even reportedly had experimental surgeries performed on them. Can you imagine? I mean, I don't want to, but no wonder they're haunting the place, right? Now, the mansion was mobbed and burned, and LaLaurie fled to Paris. She was basically like, see ya, but the spirits of her victims never left, and I don't blame them. I mean, these goo-goos got some unfinished business with her, and they're standing on business, as they should, period. For nearly 2 centuries, residents and visitors alike have reported hearing just a bunch of crazy stuff, like wailing screams, phantom footsteps, and seeing shadowy figures kind of lurking in the upper windows. Now, some even say the ghost of Madame LaLaurie herself still haunts the house, trapped in her legacy of torment. Actor Nicolas Cage actually bought the mansion in 2007 and sold it just 2 years later. You don't say. Now, he never explained why, but insiders say he couldn't handle what was happening inside. I mean, I feel like that is just so on brand for Cage. I feel like I'm not even shocked that he bought it for some reason. I just feel like this is something he would do, honestly. I do love me some Nicolas Cage. I mean, fun fact, I have a pillow with his face on it. We call it Pillowless Cage. Anyway, the place is haunted, so don't visit, or do, and report back. The old state capitol located in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. So this place, it looks like a castle, and it's haunted like one too. I mean, the old state capitol in Baton Rouge is a stunning Gothic revival building perched on the Mississippi River, but behind the stained glass windows and spiral staircases lies a very long and eerie history. It was originally built in 1852. The building served as Louisiana's state house and witnessed everything from Civil War occupation to massive political upheaval. Now, it even burned down once and had to be rebuilt. But the real reason people say it's haunted, well, Pierre Couvillon, a fiery politician who passed away during a heated debate inside the chambers, apparently still roams the halls and rooms there and refuses to leave. Visitors claim he's still there. Now, many, if not almost all visitors, claim to have heard banging desks, slamming doors, and someone, likely Pierre, mumbling angrily in French. So I mean, most non-French speaking visitors don't actually know what he's saying. I mean, he could honestly just be recommending the best place close by to get a hot dog, but we'll never know. Or he's saying get out. I mean, that's also a really good high possibility. Now, staff and tourists have reported hearing phantom footsteps when the building is empty, unexplained cold drafts, and even lights flickering without any power issues. Now, the basement is particularly unsettling. Paranormal investigators have recorded EVPs, strange electromagnetic readings, and a persistent sense of just being watched. So basically, all things spooky that you would expect when visiting, well, you know, a spooky haunted place. If there's a checklist, this place ticks off every single box. It's now a museum, but employees refuse to work there alone after dark. I don't blame them. I mean, some claim the building itself seems to breathe, like it's alive and angry. I mean, that's kind of terrifying in itself. I don't want to go anywhere where a building is breathing. Like, what? Would you visit this place? Let me know.
Next up, we head all the way over to Japan with Kejanuma Leisure Land. If you've ever wanted to visit a theme park haunted by a ghost woman and her serpentine offspring, well, this is the spot. Kejanuma Leisure Land opened sometime in the 70s and stayed open for over 2 decades before shutting down in 2000. It was a modest park by most standards, nothing too flashy here, but it had all the basics: a Ferris wheel, go-karts, swan boats, and some children's rides. The land around the park was gorgeous too. Thick forest and hills, a pond that locals said had a strange energy about it. That's where the legend begins. It's said that long ago, a beautiful woman lived by the pond. She got pregnant, but when she gave birth, what came out wasn't human. It was a creature, a twisted serpentine thing that slithered back into the pond and disappeared under the water. That night, the woman started to hear crying. It was soft at first, but it got louder and louder as the days went on. It was infant cries, wailing. Every single night, the sound came back, driving her deeper and deeper into madness. Sleep became almost impossible, and instead of trying to start over somewhere new, she decided to end it all. She walked into the pond and drowned herself, but not before cursing the land. And ever since, people say the grounds are cursed. Even after the theme park was built, workers reported strange things happening. Tools going missing, sudden drops in temperature, and sounds coming from the woods. Visitors claimed to hear splashing in the pond even when it was completely still. And some swore they saw something long and snake-like gliding just under the water. Today, what's left of the park is this rusted Ferris wheel and a few rotting buildings, but those who visit say the energy there still feels wrong. And we're finishing off with Nara Dreamland again in Japan. Now, unfortunately, this place has been demolished, but for a long time, it sat completely abandoned, and urban explorers would share some rather creepy stories about the place, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, the backstory. Nara Dreamland was a theme park in Nara, the capital city of Nara Prefecture. It opened in 1961 and stayed open for decades. It finally shut down in 2006. It couldn't afford to stay open anymore because attendance kept dropping, especially once Tokyo Disneyland opened in the 80s. Basically stole the spotlight. Why go for the knockoff when you can go for the real thing? But Nara Dreamland was no small operation. The place was massive. We're talking a small village size here. It had a Main Street style entrance, a castle, a monorail, and a Jungle Cruise knockoff. It sat abandoned for over 10 years and it was finally demolished in 2017. There's something especially eerie and sad about abandoned theme parks in general. I mean, these are places that are literally built to be filled with people. Everything is made to be an overload of the senses, larger than life, cartoony statues, colorful signs, cheerful music pumped through speakers. You're supposed to walk through hearing laughter, roller coasters, and screams. So when these places are dead silent, paint is peeling, the metal is rusting, and vines are growing through what used to be gift shops. It's eerie to say the least, and it doesn't help that urban explorers would claim to hear strange sounds near the park's old boat ride. Some said they heard splashing, even though the water had long since dried up. Others said they'd see shadowy figures ducking behind buildings or moving just out of frame in their photos. One explorer even swore they saw the silhouette of a person standing perfectly still at the top of the rusted roller coaster, only for it to vanish when they looked again. Brandywine Springs in Delaware was a cozy little park until a rejected man showed up with a firearm, took the lives of 2 people, and tried to burn the place to the ground. And Holy Land, USA in Connecticut was supposed to be a tribute to faith, but after it shut down and fell into decay, something incredibly disturbing happened there. These are abandoned theme parks with disturbing backstories. First up is Joyland Amusement Park, which was anything but joyful. This one opened in 1942 in Wichita, Kansas. Originally, it was a pretty limited setup. There were just a few rides, but it expanded over the years to include bumper cars, carnival games, a haunted house, and the park hosted outdoor concerts and festivals too. For a while, it was the go-to summer spot in the area, but for all the fun that happened there, the park was also the site of some extremely dark moments. The most disturbing was the death of Michael King. He was a man who'd confronted 4 teenagers for sneaking into the park after hours. What happened next was beyond brutal. The teens attacked him, and he ended up getting impaled and left to die. 2 of the attackers were underage and avoided charges. The other 2 were tried and convicted. But even with the crime hanging over the park, Joyland didn't close. But trouble kept following. Over the years, there were a number of accidental deaths. One person reportedly fell off a roller coaster. Another worker was crushed while doing maintenance. Standard carnival horror stories, sure, but when they start piling up, it's hard not to think the place was cursed. Eventually, after yet another tragedy, this time someone falling to their death from the Ferris wheel, Joyland was starting to feel the negative effects of its increasingly negative reputation. Insurance became a nightmare, attendance dropped, and finally, in 2004, the park shut down. For years, the place sat empty, rotting in the Kansas sun. Rides were rusting, graffiti covered every surface. But then in 2018, a couple named Gregory and Tina Dungan bought the grounds with plans to turn it into an event venue for concerts, traveling carnivals, and weddings. Because nothing says eternal love like saying your vows at the sight of multiple deaths and one very infamous killing. I mean, what kind of wedding playlist to even put together for something like that? Next up, we have Brandywine Springs in Wilmington, Delaware. This one might just be the oldest theme park on the list. It was open from 1886 to 1923. Not much of it is left today. It's mostly just a park with walking trails and a few markers, but back in the day, Brandywine Springs was a pretty happening place. There was a wooden roller coaster, a train that looped around the grounds, and a place called the Castle House, which was kind of the central attraction. It wasn't on the scale of Disneyland, obviously, but for its time, it was a pretty magical little spot. But not everything about the park was family friendly. In 1916, Brandywine Springs was the scene of a violent crime. A man named Samuel Gungus had become obsessed with Catherine Bodecki, a waitress who worked at the park's restaurant. Catherine did not return Samuel's feelings. She rejected him, and he did not take this well, which is a major understatement. By didn't take it well, I mean he completely snapped. He showed up one day in a fit of rage and shot both Catherine and her friend, Aretty Nichols, who'd had the bad luck of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Gungus wasn't done. He tried to burn the whole park down. He set fire to the restaurant, the photo gallery, the nearby concession stands. It was a full-on arson spree. That day definitely marked a turning point, but the park limped along for a few more years. Eventually, though, it closed for good in 1923. Now it's just this quiet, wooded area where people jog and walk their dogs, but some say they've seen things there, shadowy figures in the early morning fog, and supposedly the area near where the old restaurant was always feels colder than the rest of the park. There used to be a theme park called Holy Land USA in Waterbury, Connecticut. It was abandoned for a while, having closed in 1984, but in 2014 it actually reopened, and it's now open to the public during daylight hours. For a while, though, it was just a decaying skeleton. It was originally built as a religious theme park in the 60s. There were miniature versions of famous biblical landmarks like a tiny Jerusalem, small-scale temples, and statues of angels and saints scattered around the hills. It attracted thousands of Christian tourists back in the day, but by 1984 the park fell into disrepair and it was shut down. Nature started taking over that and vandals, and for a long time it looked like a war zone with rusting structures and crumbling statues, shattered glass everywhere. But then came a real horror story. In 2010, two teenagers, Chloe Ottman and Francisco Cruz, decided to sneak into the abandoned park. Now, this wasn't anything unusual. Lots of people had done it before. Chloe and Francisco were friends. They knew each other through school and church, and there was no reason for her to feel unsafe. But that night, something changed. Francisco made unwanted advances. When Chloe turned him down, he snapped. He forced himself on her, then killed her before dragging her body into the woods. Eventually he confessed though, and police found Chloe's body. Francisco was sentenced to 55 years in prison.
Next up is what locals in Maribel, Wisconsin call Hotel Hell, and if you've ever seen it in person, it's not hard to see why. And no, there is no Gordon Ramsay lurking around. The Maribel Caves Hotel has been nothing but a hollow, broken shell for decades. But even though it's just a hollow, empty, depressing, dark, dank shell of a place with nothing left but stone walls and rubble, there is something about it that feels more than that. Something wrong, at least so they say. It was built in 1900 as a luxury spa for the wealthy, and for a while it was. People came to relax, breathe in the healing air, and escape the chaos of the early 20th century. But things started going downhill when the hotel caught fire. More than once. 3 times, actually. The final fire in 1985 ruined everything, and it was never rebuilt. 3rd time's the charm, I guess. But people kept coming after it burned down, not just for urban exploration. People were drawn to it for other reasons. Visitors started coming back with stories about eerie whispers coming from the ruins. There would be cold spots even in the middle of summer, and shapes would dart between what's left of the stone arches. Human shapes. But there was never anyone actually there. Some say you can hear footsteps walking across where floors used to be. There are also stories of lights glowing in the old tower, but you guessed it, there's no electricity. As if you needed me to tell you that. Just look at this place. And finally on our list today we have the Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City in the Philippines. Up in the hills of Baguio City in the Philippines there's an old crumbling building called the Diplomat Hotel. Looking at images of it, it clearly looks like the set for a horror movie, but those who've seen it up close and personal, it feels like walking right into a horror movie. And its history doesn't make the place any more welcoming. Originally built in 1913 by the Dominican Order, it was supposed to be a peaceful retreat for priests. That peace didn't last long. When World War II started, the Japanese took over and turned the place into something a lot darker. Locals say priests, nuns, and even young people were killed here. Many were beheaded. Story goes that on some nights you can still hear screams echoing through the halls. After the war, the building was bombed pretty badly, but it didn't stay destroyed for long. In the 1970s, a faith healer named Tony Agpaoa bought it and turned it into a hotel. He was kind of a weird guy, known for doing surgeries with no tools, just his hands. A lot of people thought there was something off about him. Wonder what gave them that idea. I'm kind of starting to see where they were coming from. When he died in the 80s, the hotel shut down, and ever since, the building's been sitting there, slowly falling apart. Those who visit claim they've seen headless figures walking around. Others say they've heard chanting, crying, and doors slamming when no one else was around. A lot of folks in the city avoid the place altogether, especially at night. Even though it's abandoned, the city's trying to clean it up and turn it into a tourist spot. But no matter how much paint they slap on it, give it the landlord special, the stories haven't stopped. Locals still call it one of the most haunted spots in the Philippines.